The slap echoed through the airport like a starter pistol, snapping every head around. If you'd ever wondered what happens when a billionaire CEO gets dropped in a terminal, literally dropped, by her own business partner, well, let me tell you, it isn't pretty, and it sure as hell isn't private. I saw Natalie Cross, all sharp suits and sharper reputation, go down hard, blood at the corner of her mouth, the sort of scene you never expect to witness outside a Netflix drama. Please don't hit me. I'm already hurt, she whispered, sounding more human in that moment than a decade of Forbes profiles ever let on. Her dignity was shredded, her suit torn at the shoulder, her hair wild. If you'd only ever seen her on magazine covers, you wouldn't recognize her. Now here's the thing. The guy looming over her, Richard Blackwood, wasn't just some random jerk. He was supposed to be her right hand, her father's chosen successor, the guy you trust when you're running a pharmaceutical empire. Turns out, he was the architect of the scheme meant to sell off her shares and her soul in one neat, tidy little marriage contract to some Tokyo conglomerate. Natalie tried to escape. She ran, but Richard caught her at Gate B17, mid-November rain coming down in sheets, and you could feel the crowd's tension buzzing as every phone in the place started filming, not helping. Maybe they thought she deserved it. She'd been called ruthless, heartless, a corporate ice queen who fired thousands and refused to lower drug prices when Congress begged her. But nobody deserves that. You know what I mean? Richard yanked her up, bruises already blooming on her cheek, and hissed in her ear. You're going to call your board right now. Accept the marriage deal. Sign away control, and disappear. Natalie's only answer was to try and pull away, which earned her another smack, right in front of everybody. People gasped. No one moved, except a little girl in light-up sneakers, clutching her dad's hand, who piped up, "Daddy, why is that man hurting that lady?" The whole terminal froze. The dad, a rough-looking guy in jeans and a flannel, hair uncombed from a long day, stepped forward, quiet but determined. That's how Mark Davis walked into Natalie's life, straight from his mother's funeral, exhausted and raw, just trying to get his daughter home to Chicago. He didn't know Natalie from Adam, but when his daughter, Lily, saw pain, he acted. "Sir," he said, voice low, "let her go." Richard bristled. "This is a private matter." But Mark wasn't backing down. He had that vibe, you know, the kind of man who's been in a war zone and seen the real ugly. "Looks like assault from where I'm standing," he replied. Richard sneered. "You know who I am." Mark just took another step, calm as a Sunday morning, but you could tell he was a wall you didn't want to crash into. "You're scared," Mark said quietly, pointing out the tremor in Richard's hand. "Maybe you should let her go." And for the first time, Richard looked small. He shoved Natalie forward and stormed off, promising revenge. Mark caught her, steady as a rock. The crowd scattered, muttering about rich people drama, already half convinced Natalie deserved whatever she got. Mark asked gently, "You okay?" Natalie tried to stand, but her knees buckled. That's when Lily came over, rummaging in her unicorn backpack for Band-Aids and juice boxes. "Juice helps when you're sad," she declared. "That's just science." Even Natalie almost laughed. It turned out, she had no one to call, family gone, friends lost to corporate sacrifice. Mark guided her to a bench. Up close, he looked worn but strong, with the kind of eyes that see right through you. Lily handed out unicorn Band-Aids like talismans, and when Natalie started to say maybe she deserved all this, Mark shut her down. "Nobody deserves that." Simple as that. Out of nowhere, Lily started explaining how her mommy went to heaven and how sadness gets softer, like a bruise. Kids, man, they cut through everything. After that, Mark offered soup and mac and cheese at a little restaurant in Terminal C. Natalie hesitated, but hunger, and maybe something deeper, won out. Over greasy burgers and crayons, she started to unspool the mess. The forced marriage, the company on the brink, the feeling she'd lost herself to boardrooms and deals. Mark didn't judge, didn't lecture. He just listened, sharing pieces of his own story, his late wife, his army days, his struggle to build a new life for Lily. The real twist? Lily, oblivious to power or money, declared her dad a hero for fixing roofs and helping people, not because he wore a suit or made millions. Natalie started seeing Mark differently, not just a good Samaritan, but someone who understood loss, who rebuilt from ashes. It wasn't advice she needed. It was company, someone to help her remember she was human, not just a headline. As the night wore on, Natalie's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Board members, Richard, her stepbrother. She turned it off. For once, she let herself be just Natalie. When their flight finally boarded, Mark insisted she sit with them. Lily at the window, babbling about clouds and angels, Mark on the aisle, and Natalie in the middle, quietly breathing. For the first time in years, feeling safe. Landing in a rainy Chicago, Mark offered her a place to crash, no strings attached. A spare room in a fixer-upper craftsman house, with mismatched chairs. A fridge covered in drawings, and a warmth you can't buy. She almost said no. Almost. But Lily sealed it, promising to show off her fish, Mr. Bubbles, who doesn't even blow bubbles. False advertising. In her view. Inside, Natalie saw a life built on second chances. Mark's handmade shelves, Lily's fairy-lit reading nook. Pictures of a smiling woman lost too soon. For the first time, Natalie envied not the wealth, but the love. Later, as she drank tea with Mark in the kitchen, Richard called. The threat was ugly. Lawsuits, lost jobs, even veiled hints about Mark and Lily. Mark stayed unflappable, the quiet kind of strong. Bullies only have the power you give them, he said. Still, Natalie felt guilt for bringing chaos into their lives. But Mark saw it differently. You gave us a chance to matter. That night, she let him treat her bruises, let Lily climb into her lap, and explain monster fighting techniques. Mark sang Lily to sleep, Blackbird, rough and sweet. And Natalie found herself wishing she belonged to this strange, patched-together family. Later, Natalie's stepbrother called, desperate to drag her back for damage control. She refused. For once choosing herself, Mark brought her water and painkillers, offering sanctuary without judgment. She admitted tomorrow would be ugly. Lawsuits, media, everything. But he just smiled. Stop running from something. Start running to something. Even if it was just breakfast. Lying in the borrowed room, Natalie thought about power, not the kind that fills boardrooms, but the kind that makes little girls braver and brings broken people together for pancakes. Maybe, she thought, losing everything wasn't the worst thing. Maybe it was a beginning. Tomorrow, she'd face Richard, the board, the world. But tonight, she'd stay for breakfast. And as the rain drummed outside, for the first time in years, she let herself rest, not as a CEO, not as a problem, but as a person finally ready to be seen. Now, you tell me, what would you have done? Walked away, called security, stayed silent, or stepped up? Drop your thoughts below. Tell me what justice looks like to you. And if you ever see someone hurting, I hope you'll be the one who stands up. That's how stories like this travel farther than any flight ever could. Sunlight hit differently in Mark's house. Natalie woke to the sound of a child's laughter and the smell of coffee brewing, strong enough to yank you upright. For a second, she couldn't remember where she was. Then the aches in her ribs reminded her. She sat up slowly, Sarah's old t-shirt soft against her skin, and listened. Down the hall, Lily's voice trilled, arguing about whether pancakes should have chocolate chips and blueberries, or if that was too much awesome for one plate. Mark's laugh, warm and sleepy, rumbled in answer. That's when Natalie realized she'd slept through the night. No anxiety jolts. No boardroom nightmares. Just honest, bone-deep exhaustion finally giving way to rest. She moved quietly, not wanting to intrude, but Mark spotted her at the kitchen door and smiled. Setting down the spatula. You're just in time. Lily's about to start a pancake rebellion. The little girl grinned, syrup already on her cheek, and waved Natalie over. I made you a spot, she said, patting a seat between her and a stuffed unicorn with a missing ear. Natalie took it, and for a few blissful minutes, the world shrank to warm pancakes, kitchen sunlight, and Lily's stories, each one wilder than the last. Mark poured her coffee, slid a plate her way, and for the first time since the airport, nobody expected her to make a decision or save a company. She just ate. But you know how it is, the quiet never lasts. Natalie's phone, left for dead on the counter, started vibrating again. Mark glanced at it, but didn't say a word. He just topped off her coffee, gave her space to choose. She let it buzz, and Lily, sensing the tension, changed the subject. Do you want to see Mr. Bubbles now? Next thing you know, Natalie's kneeling in front of a tank. watching a very unremarkable fish dart behind a plastic castle, and listening to Lily explain the science of why some fish never blow bubbles even if they should. It's silly, but it made her laugh. Then a knock. Sharp, official. The kind of knock that says, "We're not here to sell you Girl Scout cookies." Mark's body went tense, just for a moment, then relaxed, almost. He opened the door. And there they were. Two men in suits, not cops, but the kind of corporate fixers who handle problems. Natalie's stomach dropped. Richard didn't waste time. One of the men, broad-shouldered, sunglasses never leaving his face, nodded at Mark. "We're here for Miss Cross." Mark didn't flinch. "She's not interested." The second one, slicker, more talkative, produced a folder. "There are serious legal matters, sir. A breach of contract, evidence of theft, potential endangerment of a child." And that's when Natalie cut in, because that was a step too far. "Leave Lily out of this," she snapped. The man smirked. "We're just following up on a report, ma'am. If you come with us, we can make this all go away." For a second, Natalie almost did. Almost went quietly. Gave them what they wanted, just to keep Mark and Lily out of the blast zone. But Mark put a hand on her shoulder, steady, unyielding. "You're not going anywhere unless you want to," he said. Voice ironclad. That moment, tiny, really, changed everything. She looked at Lily, wide-eyed but unafraid, and knew she couldn't keep running. "You want to talk legal?" Natalie said, reaching for the steel she'd used all her life. "Get your lawyers to call my lawyers. I'm not leaving with you. If you have a warrant, show it. Otherwise, get off this porch." The men exchanged glances, not used to being challenged in front of a kid eating pancakes. The big one tried to step forward, but Mark blocked him without even looking angry. "That's enough," he said quietly. "You need to go." There's a pause, heavy, and for a second Natalie's heart thudded so loud she thought everyone must hear it. But then the men left, no warrant, no backup. Just the threat, hanging in the air. Mark closed the door and locked it. Lily stared, then asked, "Are they bad guys, Daddy?" Mark crouched to meet her eye. "Not today, sweet pea. Not as long as we're together." Natalie's hands shook, just a little. Mark poured her another cup of coffee, sat beside her at the table, let the moment settle. "You okay?" he asked. "Not really," she whispered. "But I think I will be." For the next hour, they talked, about the board, about Richard, about how the threats weren't just legal, but personal. Mark told her he'd stand by her, that nobody was getting through him to Lily, and she believed him, even if she didn't know what came next. And here's where it gets interesting, the twist nobody saw coming. Lily, in her quiet kid way, started drawing pictures. "This is you," she told Natalie, "with a crown and a sword and a shield. You're fighting a dragon." Natalie blinked at the picture, surprised at how fierce Lily had drawn. Her, bruised but standing tall, a little like a hero. "What about you?" she asked. "Oh, I'm the wizard," Lily said seriously. "Wizards fix things. Daddy's the dragon tamer. He's not afraid of anything." Natalie nearly cried, right there at the kitchen table, because here was this child who'd lost her mom, who'd seen more sadness than any kid should, still believing people could be brave and good and unbreakable. And suddenly Natalie wanted that, to be the person Lily drew, not the woman the headlines shredded. That afternoon, Mark drove them to his job site, a half-finished house on the edge of town. He showed Natalie what real rebuilding looked like. 2x4s, drywall dust, a crew that called him boss, and actually meant it. He let Lily help hammer a nail. Let Natalie see that power doesn't come from money or titles, but from what you build, day after day, with your hands and your heart. Meanwhile, the media started calling. News vans parked down the street. Headlines spun out of control. Runaway CEO sabotages merger. Corporate scandal hits local hero's family. Mark's neighbors brought over casseroles, not questions, forming a human wall around the house. For the first time, Natalie saw what community really meant. It wasn't shareholders or board votes, but folks who had your back when things got messy. That night, as they sat on the porch, Natalie told Mark everything. The deals, the threats, how she'd traded every piece of herself for approval she never got. Mark just listened, then handed her a root beer and said, "You can start over, you know. Every day. You're not stuck." For the first time, she wanted to believe it. Just before bed, Natalie got a call from her stepbrother. She answered, ready for another battle, but instead, she heard him, panicked, desperate, saying Richard was unraveling. The board was fracturing, and maybe, just maybe, she'd been right to walk away. Whatever happens, he said quietly, I hope you're okay. Natalie hung up, feeling lighter. She tucked Lily in, reading 3 stories and making sure there were no monsters in the closet. Mark hovered at the door, eyes soft. You don't have to fight alone, he said. Not anymore. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. In the dark, she listened to the house breathe, the creak of old wood, the hush of rain, the steady pulse of a life she never thought she'd want. Here's the thing about second acts, they sneak up on you. Sometimes they start with a slap, sometimes with a pancake breakfast, sometimes just with someone refusing to let you go quietly. The next morning, Natalie stood on the porch, her phone full of threats and offers and apologies, and decided, for once, the world could wait. She had pancakes to make, a fish to check on, and a little girl's picture to live up to. You tell me, was she running away or running towards something? And which would you choose? If it was you, drop your thoughts below, because maybe the best stories aren't about falling or fighting, but about finding the courage to start again. And if you know someone who needs that kind of start, be their mark. The world could use a few more.